noise!
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funkin' Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkinstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funkin' Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
I'm thrilled to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership funk, rock, and soul singer Lynn Mabry. She is forever known as an original Bride of Funkenstein and P-Funk vocalist, as well as for her work with the Talking Heads and Sheila E. Beginning her music career with Sly and the Family Stone, other credits include Elton John, Eric Clapton, Steve Perry, Dave Stewart, George Michael, Neal Schon, Angela Bofill, After Seven, Junie Morrison, Daughtry, Dave Koz, and Foley. Back in the day, in addition to monster tours with Parliament-Funkadelic, she contributed to all-time classic funk albums like Funkentelechy versus the Placebo Syndrome, Motor Booty Affair, and One Nation Under a Groove. Lynn, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you? I'm a little tired, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know you've been busy.
Well,
I know you did
last night I attended the Elton John Oscar viewing party that he has every year for his foundation. And it was really nice. It was my first time ever attending, and it was really cool. It was nice. I had a great time, and I stayed up later than normal. So, I'm no, it's all good, though. It's all good.
Well, you look none the worse for the wear, so that's the good news.
Thank you.
And so thrilled to have you on. I've been a fan forever, and so thank you.
I appreciate it. My pleasure.
And I know also on Friday, well, I'm not sure if it was Friday, but just the other day you did the, was it USC? The Mothership?
Yes.
Yeah, reclamation on the women's stories and Parliament-Funkadelic panel.
Yeah, that was really nice. Great turnout, great questions. Got to share a lot and fellowship a lot and see some old faces that I love. And it was good. It was a good time. It was, like I said, it was well attended and everybody seemed to enjoy themselves. So
that's awesome. And you had Cheryl James and Seth Neblett were involved too?
Yes, both a part of the P-Funk family dynasty. Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there one question that surprised you the most that somebody had?
Yeah, one of the last ones. They were asking me about how do I see my legacy being left? And, I it threw me because, I think of legend when I think of legacy. And so I am a little bit more humble than seeing myself as a legend. I said, but even though I've been told by quite a few people and read on quite a few pieces that they feel that I am somewhat of a legend. I don't know if it's my senior citizenshiphood, but I think I was just, pleasantly thrown by it. And, on a musical level, I believe is what the question was. And I could only answer it by saying that I am just really grateful that I've been able to contribute to as many artists as I have over my career. And when doing that, I have contributed in a way that I have felt like I have enhanced it. Like whatever job I do, it's not just, another voice. I really feel like now I can say that my contribution was significant. And so I'm just grateful, honestly grateful for everything I've done and everyone that, brought me in to their projects and tours and albums and commercials and everything that I've done. It's just been one big fat thankful fest for me.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, appreciate, always being humble, but well deserved for sure. Lynn, you're from Northern California, Vallejo, which also is,
Yeah.
well, that area.
Yeah, I'm born in Vallejo.
Okay.
But I'm from Berkeley.
Okay.
Love my Berkeley.
I think what helped put Vallejo on the map, though, as far as I'm concerned, is Confunction. But
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Confunction, Sly, her, she's from Vallejo. There's a little bit of something coming out of there, out of those parts.
How close is it to Sacramento?
Ooh, about an hour and a half to 2 hours, somewhere in there.
Whole distance. Okay.
Not far.
So when did you first know that you had a little bit of a gift for singing?
That was probably I was about, maybe 11-ish. And I was in my bedroom, and my mother had a really nice album collection, and she allowed me to borrow, and I had my own turntable that she had gotten for me, I believe, in my room. And so I was playing If I Were Your Woman by Gladys Knight. It's just one of her favorite songs, my favorite songs. And because I had heard it so much, I started singing along with it. And I heard my tone in her tone, or her tone in my tone. And that was the first time that I had connected with a professional. Like I'm, raised in the church when I was, a little young, taught in grammar school. I pretty much went to church the majority of that time when I was in grammar school. And so everybody sang or played an instrument. So it wasn't anything unusual. I mean, literally, like all my cousins and like everybody had a talent or gift, I should say, because none of us studied for it. It just came out. So that was the first time professionally that I had heard someone sing, and I heard myself singing it, and I would sing along. And then I remember moving to the mirror, and looking at myself singing it with her, and I was like, okay. And then it happened another time shortly after that. Mom had a Carpenter's album, and Karen Carpenter was singing, and there was this one little song, and I can't remember, I wish I could, but I just, remember singing the chorus with them. And I heard my tone in her tone. So I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And so if you see some blinking, my phone is going off. But that's kind of when it happened. I was very young, never, again, not feeling like I was going to be this professional singer. That was never in my plan. It was just, that's when I heard my voice. I mean, like really heard it.
Who was the first performer you ever saw that really kind of got to you, that you felt in your soul and heart and really impressed you?
Wow. First performer that really impressed me. Ooh. I'm going to say first probably was James Brown. And I'm saying that because that was the first concert I ever went to in my life. And that was wild because the music was amazing. he was, quite the entertainer, and it was just wild to see. So I was sort of impressed just by the performance aspect of James Brown, the show itself. Female, I'm going to say, it's a cross between, I'll say Patti LaBelle was the first woman that I went to a performance and I cried because of her singing. That was a first. There's a couple of others early on that I can say moved me, but those two were the first. Like James Brown, because I was just a kid and I went to see him. And then I remember I was dating my boyfriend. I was in high school, and we got LaBelle tickets. It wasn't Patti, but it was LaBelle. And man, she was singing, and I was like, wow. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those two I think are the first for sure.
And now Sly was a cousin, is that correct?
Yes, he's my second cousin.
So when did you become aware of that? And was it something that was talked about in the family, the source of pride, or what was it like?
Because we're family, it was just, we were family first. So I knew all of my cousins, him included, all the sisters, brothers, cousins, prior to me being aware of the success. As I got older, I realized, this is my cousin Sly, who has these amazing records out, and that's my cousin Rose and my cousin Freddie, and still family. But then it was just like, wow, so many other people are, loving them and wanting to hear them and buying their records, and I'm seeing them on TV and this and that. So I wasn't too like starstruck. I wasn't starstruck at all, to be honest with you. But I think when I started to see the response from people is when I realized, and then of course, love the music anyway. So everything he had or they came out with, I loved it. We played it at the house all the time. My mom and Sly were really close. So, that was cool and nice. And he would come to the house sometimes or whatever. And, when I was a youngin'. So it was something, like I said, it was family first. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was pretty amazing when I would see the response from everyone. That was kind of cool.
And did you get to go to a concert at some point and witness firsthand?
It took me not until I was a teenager, late teens, I think. Maybe like 16, 17, something like that. And I don't remember like which city we were in, but it was just like we got invited. And it was wonderful. Music was great. But again, like it was just seeing what I knew live. But my first like intimate experience is when I started working with him in 1975. So.
But did you get to go backstage when you saw him before that?
No, it was never a backstage thing. No, just go see and done.
So what was the sequence of events that aligned you with having the opportunity to perform with him?
Okay, so my first actual paid gig was when I was my last year of high school, and my boyfriend at the time, Charles, he would come and pick me up certain days, and we would go places or whatever. And so he came to pick me up, and he said, "Ooh, I was listening to the radio, and this guy Coke Escobedo is conducting, what do you call them? Auditions. He needs a backup singer, and you should audition." And my first thought was, huh? I was planning on going to college. I was going to be a psychologist. I had already been accepted. It was almost like, really? And he said, "Oh no." He said, "You ought to do it. I hear your voice. You should do it." And he could have told me to go and become a carpenter, and I probably would have done it because I was so in love. And so just anything that he said and did, I was just like, okay. So I went, not really knowing how the audition process goes. And I went there, and This lady was horrible. I was sitting next to another woman who was auditioning. And she had a briefcase, and she opened her briefcase and she took out sheet music. I just came with me and my purse. I learned, I think, one of his songs or two of his songs, because, you know, they said just listen to it and just kind of come prepared. And then I looked at her and I said, excuse me. I said, was I supposed to bring sheet music? And she looked at me, she goes, well, yeah, how else can you sing? And I was just, so I kind of freaked out. But then it was my turn. She went first. She was all right. It was just, she was reading, but there was no passion. There was no, you know, it was just, and then I just kind of went up and I just did my thing. But there was a keyboard player for him and this guitar player. And I think the guitar player was Wayne. And they both made me feel so comfortable. They said, don't worry about it. Just whatever you want to sing, just sing. And we, you know, just chill, like just be you. So I took a deep breath and sang my two songs and then went and sat down. And then someone said, okay, now that the audition's over, we're just going to contact everybody and let you know we have your numbers, and we'll let you know if you've been selected or not. So I just went home thinking, you know, that was my first audition anyway. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I may or may not hear back. Well, sure enough, I got the call. And they said, and we want you to come back and do one last audition, but this time it'll be with Coke. And so I went there, and when I got there, there was myself and another woman, Judy, little cute Puerto Rican, cute, sweet Judy. And it was just the two of us. And so she goes, oh, you got to call back too? And I said, yeah. So I guess they're going to, you know, choose between the two of us, or, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I got to call back. So we both did our thing. Next thing I know, they called us and said, we like you both. We loved how you both sang. So I started working with him and, you know, the band. And then my mom, like I said, Mom and Sly were hanging, and Sly said, hey, I'm doing a project and I want more of our family to be involved, you know, I was born Peggy Lynn. And so he says, Peggy Lynn, is she singing? Or still singing? Because I know everybody has heard everybody in church. So she goes, yeah. And he says, well, you know, I'd like her to come and maybe do a couple songs in the studio. And so she asked me if I wanted to go. I'm like, absolutely. And so I went to the studio and I started doing sessions for his Heard You Miss Me, Well, I'm Back album, that solo album. So much fun. And again, I was more comfortable because now I'm just singing with family. And he would just show us parts and, you know, write the words down and all that kind of stuff. So working with him, I just started like in the studio. And then Sly got a call to open up for P-Funk and Bootsy. And it was going to be this 3-week, I think 2 or 3 week tour. And so I said, hey, we've been asked to, you know, go on tour. Do you want to go? So of course I asked my mom, and I think this was summertime, so it didn't interfere with anything. And so she was like, yeah. So we went on tour. Great fun, crazy. It was weird, but that's kind of how it went from Sly. And then you haven't asked me back, but that's really how I started working with Sly. It was just because I was in the studio with him, and then he said, hey, we're going to go on tour. And I was singing with Dawn as well. She was one of the singers. It was just the two of us, if I'm not mistaken. And I know that, of course, Cynthia did sing a lot too on some stuff. So, and then the guys in the band sang. And then we just kind of went on tour.
What was the Coke material? Latin flavored?
Yeah, it was Latin jazz. It was Latin jazz. Yeah, it was fun. I remember one of the songs was fried neck bones and some home fries. Huesos fritos de papa que te casa, something like that. It was fun. And of course, I couldn't speak any Spanish, but thankfully, the majority of the songs were not in Spanish. There were only small little taglines. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What was a lesson? Maybe, I don't know if lessons is the right word, but approach that you learned early on, just going to the studio with Sly like that, having not done that before, and you know, what did you kind of pick up that helped you later on in those early experiences?
I'm just going to say probably listen and then, follow directions, listen to what's being asked of me, how to be a part of the collective, what they wanted to hear. Um, everything that I did, probably the first 20 years was all a learning experience, because everything was different. Every artist was different. And so I think my biggest takeaway lesson was for me to be myself and to let who I was vocally, let my gift kind of come out and let that be enough. Of course, I was very intimidated by a lot of artists that I worked with. And that was very difficult because I'm not a vocal gymnastics type person. I just do what I do. And so sometimes I did have some serious self-esteem issues with my capability. I knew I was able to sing, but it was just like, how far can I go? And so I was sort of like learning that who I was enough for the majority. I'm literally like 95% of the time, like who I was enough. And that was really good for me to maintain.
What was it like that first time on stage with Sly and the group?
Um, Fun, a little. I was nervous, very nervous. I remember, I think we did a TV show before we did a live show. I think it was like Don Kirshner's rock concert or something like that. And it was Dawn, Virginia, and myself. The three of us were singing backup for Sly. And that it made it easier because I had the girls with me and we were all like a unit. And then, when I saw the cameras and everything, that was kind of weird because I'd never done that. So I was nervous. But because I felt like I was with family, it made it a lot easier to do. And then the live stuff, I think singing live was a lot easier for me to do than studio, because I felt like it was being, recorded, and have to look a certain way, got to make sure, and it was a little stressful. Had a little anxiety about it, but that was probably, yeah, I'm gonna say just like that maybe the first year, I got all the kinks out of being, scared.
And how'd you work out the harmonies?
It was sort of based on the tone that we had. Like, with Sly, I have a deep bottom tenor type voice, so I always sang on the bottom most of the time. And then I think Virginia did the middle, and Dawn did the soprano most of the time. And that's with most everything. Like anybody that gets singers and incorporates singers together, they go by their tone. And so if I'm known for, my tenor singing or my, the tone that I have when I'm on the bottom, then that's what I'm going to get hired for. No one's going to hire me to be a soprano. Just not going to happen. Now I can fake it. But so that's pretty much how you deal with harmonies. You have your part, and then you listen to the music, you listen to what's been done. Or like I said, with the performances with Sly, the songs that we did that was from his solo album, we sang on the record, so I knew it. So that was kind of easy, but pretty much.
Was there anything you got to see Sly do musically that you were like, wow, this dude is really super talented?
See, over the years I've seen him, so it wasn't like a surprise. And like I said, everybody in the family either sang or played an instrument, so it wasn't unusual that he played, guitar and piano. I don't think I ever saw him on the drums, but I did see him on guitar sometimes and piano most of the time.
Yeah, you were jaded. See it all the time.
Oh,
Wow.
I know.
What was your first impression of Don? Did you guys become friends easily, or?
Yeah, we had fun. It was actually, she made me feel really comfortable because she had already been there. She had been recording already, and Sly brought me in. So she made me feel comfortable, made me feel at home. And, we instantly became homies and friends, the three of us, with Virginia too. I think Virginia did, she was the other singer. So the three of us would do stuff together and it was easy. So yeah, I felt at home.
And were you a funk fan, before that at all, or did you kind of find out about it and embraced it after?
I found out about it, embraced it
Yeah.
out. Like I said, raised in the church in the beginning, we couldn't even listen to the radio. Anything secular, we couldn't even listen to. And so yeah, like my aunt, my mom's sister, she was the most lenient of all the siblings. Well, my uncle too. Yeah, he was pretty cool too. But my aunt, my Auntie Doris, she would allow us to listen to music because she didn't feel it was a sin like the rest of them did. And so went to go to her place and we'd listen to all the songs and sing together. My cousins, Dickie and Pat and Snooky and I would always sing. We were like this quartet. We were just singing to everything. Our cousin Sly and the Family Stone included, of course. So yeah, it wasn't anything unusual.
So now you slipped away. Well, you saw, so how did you first see P-Funk perform?
Oh, when we did the tour, when we did that tour with P-Funk and Bootsy, we would go on because we opened up the show. We'd go on, and then when we were done, we'd go back to the stage. I don't even think we changed clothes. We just went to the stage and stood on the side of the stage pretty much every show and just watched. And it was fascinating. I mean, fascinating. And the talent was crazy. And the clothes was way crazy. Like we would like kind of snicker about it, like, homie's in diapers and, why does Glenn got this RCA dog patch on his eye? There was just like, it was a show. It was like being, in a Broadway show or something, except it was just funk music. And that was the beginning. Like the majority of the music prior to that was just some little R&B stuff, that we would hear on the radio, the phonics, kind of a thing, and Supremes, and, but it wasn't, I didn't have this vast knowledge of secular music at all. And so, yeah.
I came in personally, I came in a Mothership Connection album. It was like the second album I ever bought myself,
Oh.
Yeah. So, but when Sly was opening, was that a Mothership show or was that pre-Mothership?
Yeah. Wow. Ooh. I think it was a Mothership show because I remember when we did the show, I think it was Mothership. It was 1970.
6?
5'6", yeah, 5'6".
Yeah.
Because we like I said, I think we did the tour 75 because remember I graduated in 75 high school. So yeah, so it was somewhere in that 75, 76 year.
Yeah. So you got the full deal right there. Yeah.
Full slap me in my face deal.
What transpired to jump ship and hop on the mothership, so to speak, from Sly?
What transpired was, after we did the tour opening up for P-Funk, George asked us girls if we would want to ever do any sessions because oftentimes, he's in the studio and he would love to incorporate. He loved our voices. He loved our, unit. And so he, if we weren't performing or doing anything, it was no problem for us to sing and do any sessions with him. So we did a few. Then he told us, we're coming to Oakland and we just want to invite you to come to the show and hang. So we were, decided to go, and it was just Dawn and I that went. And because at the time, Virginia had an accident. And so she was physically recovering. And then she wasn't singing. I don't think she sang for years after that, a few years at least. But anyway, so it was just Dawn and I. And we went to go see P-Funk at the Oakland Coliseum. And we were on the side of the stage just watching. And then George sort of motions us to come and sing. And so because we had heard, them sing before because of the tour, we just kind of joined in on maybe one big long jam. It's probably one of those 15-minute, 20-minute songs. And we were singing, just had fun, T-shirts and jeans. It was no big deal. Sang, that was fun. And then off we went. We get home, she at hers, mine at mine, and we both received a telegram from Sly's organization, and it said, due to unforeseen circumstances, pretty much, your services is no longer needed to be with Sly. So pretty much we got our papers. So this was literally the next day. So I don't know if it was that there was another show that maybe, I don't know if it was 2 nights, or George and everybody was still there in Oakland. So George, we told George, I don't know if he called or whatever, but we told him we had something to share with him. So Dawn and I went to the hotel room. I had my telegram. That's how long it was ago. And we showed it to him, and he said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, we found out that one of Sly's, homies happened to be at the show and saw us and told Sly that we were performing with P-Funk, and Sly wasn't happy about that. So he just decided to fire us." So George saw that. He said, "If he's serious, if he's firing you, I will hire you today. Like, I would love for you two to come on tour and do some more work with me. Are you game?" Pretty much. And we were like, "Heck yeah. Get fired and hired on the same day? Absolutely." And so that sort of started the family, us being a part of the P-Funk family. And of course, the first things that we did more recording at first. And then, a couple of things, concerts, whatever, came after. But the majority of what we did, probably those first few months, 3-4 months, I think we were just in the studio. And our first session was Fred Wesley and the Horny Horns, Between Two Sheets.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was the first project that we worked on.
Yeah, that was our first album and one of the better tracks on there. Very bootsy flavored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a part of all of that too. Yeah, he was there for a lot of it.
So how was your relationship with Sly after that? Were there hard feelings or?
Oh yeah, he kind of wrote me off pretty much. And it's funny too, because I was looking at his book, some of the things that he was saying, and he was sort of, I took it personally, but I didn't, because I knew when he put his mind to something, whether it was something that, he wanted something to do something, not to do something, he was very stubborn. So if he said, "You're done, you're done." And I remember, like I saw in the book, he was just like, "If you told me that, I shouldn't be doing something," which was me, fired. If you tell me, something else is going on with my music or whatever. I mean, he had like examples of people getting fired, and it was no skin off his nose. He felt nothing about it. And I'm sure because we could be replaced again, like even when I was fired, and I had already done, most of the record. Bianca came in after I left. Bianca Thornton, Lady Bianca, amazing girl. So worked with her just, he ended up working with her, but by that time he didn't need me anymore. And she was, I thought at the time anyway, she was a far better polished singer anyway. So just like, oh, kudos. She was amazing, still is amazing.
From my standpoint, I'm thinking that Sly may have already taken a little bit of a hit to his ego opening up for P-Funk rather than being a headliner at that point. And so I would think that maybe the fact that you guys were also there going to P-Funk maybe made him have a short fuse. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, I really don't think that the tour had anything to do with it, because to my recollection, I really think that he was glad to be able to be performing live again. And I don't think he fussed too much about opening up because, he stood by who he was as an artist anyway. And which is another thing that I've learned over my career is if you're confident in who you are as an artist, you don't worry about whether you opening up or closing. You just go and slay and leave. And it ought to be enough. And I think for him, that's kind of what it was. I really don't think that he was bothered by opening up, because that was the first live concert he had done in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was your first impression of some of these guys like George? You know, what were you thinking? What impressed you or puzzled you or whatever?
Yeah. Like I said, first, seeing them live, I was um, amazed. I was shocked by their appearance because, we were very preppy when it came to performing with Sly. We were like gowns, rhinestones, and gowns. And, so that was now, even though I'm a Berkeley girl, kind of a hippie at heart, just as seeing performance, that was crazy. The music was amazing. I had never heard anything like it. I mean, it was just like the band, two and three guitars going at the same time, two keyboards going at the same time. The girls and the guys singing. It was just like amazing. I was musically impressed, visually cracked up because it was wild. George was wild, but George was also fun. He was fun to be around, but he was crazy on stage. And it's interesting because the character that he had on stage was not his character necessarily off stage. So that's another good part about when you're on tour with artists and you can get to know who they are on and off stage. But live, it was wild. It was wild. And I grew to love it as a new form of music that I'd never really exposed myself to. The closest thing to it, I guess, was the James Brown concert. But even with that, it was different. George's approach, of course, being sort of the innovator of funk, as far as I'm concerned, as the majority of people know it. It was an experience. It was an experience.
Absolutely. What about a little bit personality wise of guys like George or Gary or Bootsy off stage?
Everybody was really nice. Crazy. There was some craziness, of course. Now, Bootsy, interesting enough, Bootsy to me was the one who was the same guy on stage that he was off stage. Like, we'd be in the studio or, talking, and sometimes, he'd have that, he'd do his little voice thing. And I was just like, is that him? Like that was interesting. But there was a lot of sex, drugs, rock and roll that I was not used to. And so being a very open-minded person, I didn't, what do you call it? I didn't judge them because of it. But at least, I think I said I was open enough to not judge them, but it was still weird seeing how much drugs and alcohol was being consumed, because if you weren't smoking or, snorting or something, you were drinking, and there was always heavy drinking. So it was a lot. It was a lot. But again, like I said, we had fun. We enjoyed ourselves, the majority of our experience.
What about a couple of the cats that are a bit enigmatic, like Bernie or Eddie?
Mm.
What were they like?
Bernie was big brother, hands down. Bernie was he was very protective of us. He was very, sort of, he nurtured us in a way that he would let us know, you don't want to be a part of that. You don't want to do that. No, you stay over there. You do that. Gary was like that as well. Gary was very protective. They were like big brothers, honestly. Yeah. Let's see. Michael was very quiet. Like, we didn't have a lot of conversations. But he was probably the quietest of them all, if I can say, performing.
He was also young. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He just slayed and played, and then that was enough, Yeah, everybody. Jerome. I remember Jerome Lampkin. He was so sweet. like everybody was really, really, honestly, I can just say everybody was really nice and gracious to Dawn and I when we joined the fold. There was never any weirdness, I can say. The only probably weirdness that actually started was with the girls, because it was that silly girl thing where, this is my territory, who are you kind of a deal. Again, we were all young. But I personally felt loved and appreciated being there.
Do you remember your first full show?
Ooh. I'm going to say no, I don't remember the first full show that we did. And the reason why I'm going to say that is because when we were on tour with them, even though we weren't singing with them, we were on stage with them almost every night. Like at the end of each show, George would have the entire band. Everybody would come on but Sly, the entire band. So it kind of felt like home anyway by the time that we did do a show. But no, I can't say I remember the very first one. Mm-mm. But it was probably 1977, maybe late 76, but for sure 77, because I remember after being on tour for a while, and then George decided he wanted to do the girl groups, and our Bride's Funk or Walk album was released in 78. So I know 77, pretty much that whole year we were working and performing with them. So yeah, it kind of came naturally, I think, being on that tour.
I'm just thinking about there were so many albums that came out of P-Funk in 77, 78.
Oh
It was crazy.
That's true. And we sang on a lot of them. Like, and honestly, like Dawn and I half the time didn't even know whose record was what unless it was specific. Like George had a specific project for, like we knew it was Fred Wesley when we did that record. We knew Eddie's album was Eddie's album. We knew Bernie's album was Bernie's album. But then there were other songs that we would do that would end up on other projects, us not knowing, So yeah, it was fun.
Do you remember hearing something on the radio for the first time that you were on?
Yes. I want to say it was Flashlight. That was the first time I think I heard us on the radio. It was Flashlight. Because I think Flashlight came before One Nation, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
77, Flashlight. Yeah.
Flashlight. And that was fun. Because you could really hear Dawn and I's voice on that, la da da dee da da da. That was fun. And it was a fun session to boot. So yeah, Flashlight was it. Flashlight was the first song I heard on the radio.
I still remember when I first heard it on the record, because it wasn't yet played on radio. They were playing Bop Gun as the lead single. And then Flashlight came on, and I'm like, this was like last track. I'm like, and I never heard anything like it in my life. It was just so innovative and unbelievable. It's one of those tracks that I had to keep listening to over and over again because it was just mind-blowing.
Yeah. It was, again, working in the studio was a lot of fun. And it was back in the day, there was not a lot of sampling of anything. So everything that we did was live. I mean, down to the hand claps. He would literally have, say, for instance, if there was a full day session and we were all, different members were there, when it came time for the hand claps, every single person who was on the record came in for the hand clap track. And that was crazy to just have everybody clapping together live. Couple of, tracks maybe of it, but it was really a fun, the majority of it was always just fun, I just enjoyed myself and just kind of grateful to be a part of the fun.
What was your reaction when you learned that there was going to be a Bride's project?
First reaction was we didn't know whether we were going to be Brides or Parlette. We heard about the name, but we did not hear who was going to be who. I personally, because we heard a couple of tracks, I wanted to be a part of Parlette because those tracks, it was just like a female P-Funk. It was just funky, 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 funky. And so, for the music part, I loved what I heard they were doing. From the name part, I thought being a bride would be fun just because the name was so cool. And, after, a while and working on everything, George decided, okay, you and Dawn are going to be the brides and the other girls are going to be Parlette. And I think, let me just speak for myself. Just happy to have a project that was dedicated to us. That was cool. So this is our first, this is the two of us. And we have we're working on a record, for us. And, I would say that honestly, when I was hearing the songs, they were cool. Of course, Disco to Go was like the funkiest track.
Monster, yeah.
For sure. Glad that was our first single and our breakout song. And the other songs I think were very sort of safe to me. Very R&B safe. And I think maybe and I never really had a full-on, thorough, in-depth conversation with George about why he chose the music that he chose. But I do remember him saying to us that he wanted kind of to sort of maintain that sort of class and sound and tone that we had when we were with Sly. And like I said, we were very preppy. We weren't doing anything funky, except for, thank you for letting me be myself and that kind of stuff. But I think that he had always kept that vibe in mind. And so, he got, the Run Dunbar and the, different people that wrote songs. But again, I think they were very safe. And I didn't want to be, and that was interesting because this is our first project and I didn't want to be that safe. I wanted to do more stuff like we had been exposed to and other of the songs and projects that we had worked on with George. But George said he had a plan and, we trusted him for his plan. And, I have to say when Disco to Go came out, we were shocked at the response. I mean, we made the Billboard charts. We were freaking out. We were on the top 100 list and we were creeping up with George and we were on the list at the same time. And I remember saying to Dawn, and I remember I don't remember, there was somebody else, but I just remember us talking about we didn't want to be on the charts when George was on the charts because we didn't think it was fair because everybody would really be listening to all the, Parliament-Funkadelic stuff. And then we would be like a, consolation prize. So before he came on the charts, we were on the charts on the charts alone. And we were just climbing up those charts, climbing. And then the next thing I know, George comes on the chart with his Parliament-Funkadelic self. And then our numbers started going down. Dang it. But again, it was a blessing. It was wonderful, to be on the charts at all, to have people recognize. And then, of course, once we started touring and we had our own band and we started touring, the band was killing. We had all our Baltimore boys and they were like killing. And our show was killing. And I even, remember George, saying to us, he said, uh-oh, y'all, okay, now. Y'all a little bit too funky up in here. We had a really nice group and, singing. And when we did our Disco to Go, the single, the crowd just responded. And that was really amazing, and I'm a teenager. Okay. So it was nice.
People need to realize, 1978, when you came out with that, you were competing with just within your circle, Motor Booty Affair and One Nation Under a Groove.
And it was like a competition with everybody. It was a competition with P-Funk. It was a kind of a competition with Parlette. I mean, honestly, even though our projects kind of came out at different times, we were still, our entities. And I have to tell you, I never really felt anything other than when I remember hearing and seeing Parlette I was just like, oh, hands down, they're just the funkiest. And the songs are funky, you know. However, when we started doing our thing live, I realized that we did have something that was different, and we did have a really special group of guys. And so I started to just kind of focus on us, whether thinking of the competition thing. And it was kind of too early on for us to really understand business-wise what that meant. But it was just a very enlightening and overwhelming situation to be in.
You guys were like a little more sophisticated, you know, in the
For sure.
presentation, you know, sort
Right.
of sophistafunk, you know, and
Yeah.
Parlette was more, you know, down and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
and, you know, one of the best concerts I ever saw in my life among the hundreds I've seen was the Brides at the Starwood in Hollywood, which I've talked about on the show before, but
That was a
I
good one.
still just unbelievable being in that sardine can of crowd. And
Yeah.
just, it was, I mean, I sweated probably 10 pounds just in the audience at that show, but you guys and your band and then P-Funk after the anti-tour, it was unreal.
Yeah, that show blew Dawn and I away. I remember that. We went away from that show feeling like, oh my God, if this is what our experience doing this is going to be, we're golden, because everything about that show was awesome. Music was awesome. The crowd was extremely responsive. You were there, you know. So yeah, that was probably, I'm going to say probably the most memorable. And there was another one later on that we did in, I want to say it was Melbourne, something like that. And Dawn and I came out, and it was like, I remember seeing, it was like a giant white circus tent almost. Because I remember the lights illuminating, and I remember like when we would walk on, you know, and we always walked on with dry ice smoke. And I think I want to say it was Worship Tucson or something, maybe how we started.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, we came out on stage, and the crowd was like, I swear to God, it was like Prince walking on stage, but it was us. And I remember getting chills. Like right now, I'm actually getting chills thinking about it, because I remember how they reacted to us coming on that stage. And it made me feel like, you know, the public really wanted to hear us and see us. And that was big. And so that was like the second time. Now, of course, we did have other shows, you know, but that one too just blew me away on how well we were received. How, I mean, it was like almost like we were adored. Like we were really like, and that was new, you know, for me, because this is our first, and I say solo duo project, because it was the two of us out there in front, but they were there for us, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I still really liked on that first album though, Amorous and Birdie.
Yeah. And it was fun. Again, they were fun songs. We had fun doing. I remember the Birdie session was heck of fun. But yeah, again, like you said, it was that classier, more vibe, and that was okay too. It really was. Like I wasn't upset at all doing any of it. I think I just wanted more. And so, but you know, George had a vision, and that's something that I kind of respected over my time with, you know, the collective, that everything was a thought out vision. And so you just had to trust the process.
The fact that he kind of kept things somewhat straight during that peak era is just amazing. You know, all that was accomplished. And the one album I didn't mention that you guys were sort of competing with in your inner circle was also Bootsy Player of the Year. So 78, that also came out. Unbelievable.
I'm telling you, that was fun, because everybody had projects at the time that were somewhat successful. You know, not financially, you know, we weren't making any money, but we were having fun and being a part of this worldwide phenomenon.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon or consider donating at funkenstuff.net. Thank you very much.